does that even mean? What is intergenerational trauma? Because we always kind of hear blanket terms of trauma, and we oftentimes tend to kind of correlate it to abuse, any sort of substance use, and stuff like that. But trauma can be kind of passed down from generation to generation. And intergenerational trauma is also linked sort of to historical trauma. So big catastrophic traumatic events that happen to a cultural group or a large group. It's also sometimes called transgenerational trauma. I wrote little notes so I wouldn't forget this.
Yes.
And some of the researchers kind of call it a silent suffering or a shared stress. So how that impacts our bodies and how that can be passed on to children. Since mothers are the ones that bear children in utero, all of those things can be kind of passed on.
Yeah. I made notes too. It's also known as parental trauma, so trauma that
Yeah.
parents have gone through and passed down to children. And I really loved this definition. Intergenerational trauma is a traumatic event that began years prior to the current generation. It impacts the ways in which individuals within a family understand, cope, and heal from trauma. So, trauma that happened generations before us, yet impacts
Mhm.
us very much in a big way today.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. And we do often see that. The first study was done in the 60s when they noticed children of Holocaust survivors and how much they were impacted by it. So that was kind of when the term and this ideology of intergenerational trauma did start coming up. So that kind of obviously relates to a lot of what culturally my people have gone through with Armenian genocide years before. So kind of looking back and seeing how that can correlate is really interesting. And they often, I wrote down a quick note too of like how people who have gone through any sort of famine, um, that type of trauma with food insecurity and whatnot, additionally can be passed on as well.
Yeah,
So it
absolutely.
doesn't have to be genocide and death.
Yeah,
It could be just kind of food and major catastrophic life events.
yeah,
Even 9/11, right, in the US. So,
absolutely. Absolutely. I think for me, being Hungarian, my parents grew up in communist Hungary. And so there was
sure.
absolutely rations. You'd have to stand in line for food. You'd have to, you know, really, the abundance that we're used to here today is totally
Yeah.
a different world to what they're used to. And so that absolutely impacted my parents and how they related to scarcity and abundance. And that was absolutely modeled and handed down to me. And there's also a really big correlation between family members that have gone through any kind of famine, and there
Hmm.
tends to be obesity, or there tends to be this like swing of into the other direction throughout the generations because
Yeah.
of the relationship to food and this fear of there's not enough, so we have to, you know, hoard or
Hmm.
eat everything, or not really feel connected to our hunger and fullness because they were always hungry. And so there was
Sure.
always, just a totally different relationship to food and the understanding of what is available. So it's
Yeah.
really such a fascinating topic.